The hidden reasons your skin keeps flaring is not the actual reason your current treatment is targeting. I know you feel that your skin is against you, it's just reacting to an overactive immune system, or it's just your genetics that are wired this way and you have no way out of it. But the truth is that before that very first time that you had itchy skin, or you noticed that first spot of eczema or psoriasis, or your scalp was dry, that process only happened potentially after months or years of dysregulation within your body. So if we start with the gut, we know the gut and the skin have a strong communication. So when there is gut dysbiosis, that leads to inflammation in the skin. Gut dysbiosis leads to intestinal permeability, an increase in intestinal permeability, which increases systemic inflammation. So then the body starts responding to that systemic inflammation. So this is where your immune system starts to react to the fact that there is inflammation running through the blood. Now, beyond that, we look at the hormonal balance and cortisol. One of the most common concerns that we understand is stress being a driving factor for skin conditions. So when we look at the hormonal imbalance or the cortisol resistance, that is a key driver of inflammation, systemic inflammation in the skin. So what happens with this inflammation is the skin barrier starts to weaken, and there are rashes and skin diseases that appear. There's itchiness, which means you scratch your skin, which then further damages and weakens the skin barrier and causes the disease to flourish. The other thing is that when we start focusing on the wrong thing, so if we are led to focus more on shutting down the immune system's reaction to inflammation, then ultimately the inflammation can keep thriving, or the pathways in which the inflammation is flourishing within the body keep acting, and we're not working on that. And ultimately the treatment, if it's successful, is often short-lived. So you don't experience a relief for a longer period of time, which is what you want. You want to get off this roller coaster of flare-ups and healthy skin and flare-ups and healthy skin, because that in itself can be super stressful and very concerning to understand where the driving force behind the skin condition is. So with this, if left untreated, the cycle just continues and it keeps going round and round in circles. So this brings us to why most treatments plateau. And sometimes these treatments are necessary for where we are at that specific moment. But if we're just focusing on the immune system and the inflammation, we may not be actually targeting the true contributing factors behind the flare-ups. And what happens is the results of these treatments can be short-lived, or they may no longer work because they're not actually targeting the root cause. So what we want to do is identify what's going on and driving the root cause of your current disease state, and then work out a treatment protocol that will address each and every one of these driving factors so that we can bring this body back to a wellness state. For true healing and to minimize these flare-ups in severity and in frequency, I developed the skin reset methodology. This embraces all those key contributing drivers of inflammation and imbalance and disharmony within the body. So the 5 healing pillars are calm the inflammation, restore the gut microbiome, rebuild the skin integrity, help with supporting immune regulation, and encourage nervous system and hormonal balance. By addressing all these 5 components to healing, we will reduce inflammation, we will calm the nervous system and the immune system down, and we will allow the body to get into its natural rhythm of healing. And then, importantly, what we want to do is restore the skin barrier to a healthy state so that it becomes resilient and strong and protective, as it should do, from external irritants and environmental toxins, And that way we rebuild the body to minimize these flare-ups that can be occurring in future times. So first step is to calm the flare-ups, and we do this by calming the inflammation in the body. So 3 components within that are the anti-inflammatory reset protocol, where we develop a specialized treatment for you, showing what your body needs, because the symptoms and signs that your body is showing us is key indicators of what areas we need to focus on. Then we look at calming the gut and supporting the digestive system. And then we stabilize blood sugars and insulin. These are all key factors of inflammation, so we want to target these first. Then we move on to immune reset regulation. So what we want to do is we want to regulate the immune system because of the dysregulation that's been caused by the flood of inflammation in the body. So we do this by restoring the gut dysbiosis and helping balance the gut microbiome, because this was one of the key factors that was increasing intestinal permeability, which was then a pathway for inflammation to enter the bloodstream. So we must stop and protect that pathway from occurring, and we do that by restoring gut dysbiosis and balancing the gut microbiome. Then we want to target insulin resistance. We know insulin resistance is a key factor to inflammation in the body, and when we can make the body more insulin sensitive, less inflammation, less flare-ups, and healthier skin. And finally, within this component, we really want to support the natural detoxification pathways that will clear the inflammation that's already there. So it is a focus of healing the systems that are in the body causing the inflammation pathways to happen. But we must also focus on the inflammation that's already there. We can't ignore that because that's obviously showing up on your skin. So we must reduce the inflammation there, but we also need to reduce the production and manufacture of inflammation in your body. So then the next step is stress proofing your body. We want to do that by targeting cortisol resistance and calming the nervous system. We're disrupting the chronic disease patterns. Ultimately, when we're in a state of chronic disease, that can instigate certain disruptions within your body's physiology, but also in your behavior as well. And then we want to also give you practical skills for self-regulation, so to make the right decisions to prevent this from happening again. So we not only want to restore the body's health, but we want to keep you healthy for the long term. And then finally, it's all about relapse prevention. So we're reintroducing foods, we're mapping out the skin triggers, and we're reassessing your the disease activity within your body and working out what is best needed for you moving on past this process. So let me share a little bit about Sue's journey with you. Sue had psoriasis for over 40 years of her life, had tried many different treatments. Some had helped, some didn't help. And she came and saw me at a point where she felt that she needed more. She realized that, hey, this is more than just a skin problem. What I've been doing isn't really getting rid of it, and I really would love to resolve this problem once and for all. So during her assessment, we did identify key areas that had not been addressed in her previous treatments, and that we'll focus on addressing and figuring out how we incorporate that into her treatment protocol so we can resolve these issues. So some of those areas were gut dysbiosis and impaired gut microbiome. There was hormonal imbalance as well, and there was dietary elements that we needed to address in order to help this process move along. So what she noticed was that her skin slowly was less itchy, and she noticed the thickness of the lesions start to reduce. So what that was is that with psoriasis, the skin sheds every 4 days, and healthy skin sheds every 28 days. So as we are restoring the skin's barrier, we are reducing inflammation in the body, we're working on those pathways that are contributing to inflammation. We want to stop those pathways from doing that. What happens over a period of time, and that's weeks usually, where there is less inflammation. And so the shedding of the skin is not happening as often. It's still accelerated, but it's not happening as often. It's a gradual process that moves a person from the every 4 days to every 28 days. So it took probably 2 months for her to start seeing some healthy skin come through within those patches. And then by the end of this 4-month process, a 16-week program, she noticed the lesions were all gone. But the great thing with Sue, she also saw that her sleep improved, her digestion improved, her energy had improved. Like she improved in other areas of her health beyond just her skin. And in actual fact, those were changing before she noticed the changes in her skin. But more importantly, she felt supported, and she also did feel understood in what she was going through. Because sometimes when we go through this process and see so many people, one of the concerns we have is that, do they understand this disease, and how is it that they're going to fix it or help me? Because, every time we're looking at someone to help us, we are looking at resolution. We want to be healthy. We want to restore our health as it was before the disease started. Now, below is more information about Sue's story, and there's also Kelly's story there as well. So if there's anything in that resonates with you, I really encourage you to watch these stories of people that have really contributed strongly to their healing. They've taken the initiative to make the necessary changes. It's not something where you sit back and let someone else do the work. It's really important to take responsibility for our own choices. That helps us lead to a healthier body and healthier skin. I want to share a little bit about my story with you. I was first diagnosed with psoriasis when I was age 11. And initially, I started, as most people do, went to my GP, got a steroid cream. The GP actually said, don't worry, it's nothing too concerning. This cream will help you. But unfortunately, this wasn't the case for me. It was something that seemed to grow and spread. When it spread, then my GP referred me on to a dermatologist, and gradually, with the focus really being steroid creams and UV treatments, the disease started to spread to everywhere, all over my body. And it was challenging because this was during my teenage years. When I was age 13, 14, I was bullied. And obviously you try and isolate yourself because you don't want any attention. You don't want anyone to be aware that you exist, let alone this disease exists. So I did isolate myself, and it was really to minimize any unpleasant interaction with my peers. Even there was some staff in the reception that told me, you shouldn't be here. You're going to make other kids sick. You should go home, not knowing what psoriasis was. So in having that interaction, for the most part, I think a lot of the kids didn't say anything, but those little interactions here and there, even though it might be half a dozen or so, that they really imprint reaction within you, and it influences your self-worth and also how you participate within this world. It wasn't uncommon for me to wear baggy clothes and a cap so that no one would notice my skin, but also you really wanted to, even though you were here, you wanted to just fade into the background and no one noticed you, because little things where people kind of moved away from me in fear of catching what I had, or the looks and stares, it really impacted the way you perceive yourself, the way I saw myself, and even to the point where I didn't even want to look at my own skin, let alone someone else looking at it. And I would, when I was in my early 20s, I would often put like thing across my eyes and cover my mirrors in my room so I wouldn't have to even see it. So there was definitely this idea of wanting to disconnect and disassociate, but it was also the fear of not finding a solution. My dermatologist, when I was 15, said to me, there's nothing you can do for this. This is something, it's genetic. You've got this forever. There's very little we know about it and very little we can do. And as a result, you just have to accept your destiny. This is your destiny. These are your circumstances. And I guess in thinking about it, maybe he was trying to help in some way, but certainly didn't help me. It made me feel more scared and afraid of what my future was. But with the support of my mum, and she was relentless, she didn't want to ever give up. It was, no, we'll find someone. When something failed, she would always say, we will find someone. And in my journey in seeing so many different people, when I was 18, I was in hospital the day after my year 12 exams. That's when I tried the methotrexate, and that didn't work favorably. This was in 1992, so there were no biologics at that stage. So that was kind of the end of the road. So the dermatologist basically said, that's it. Sorry, there's nothing else I can do. Go somewhere else. And not necessarily giving me options, but just kind of very broad statement of go somewhere else. And we tried a lot of different things. And then I tried Chinese medicine when I was probably 19, 20, I would think. And within a couple of months, it was a massive transformation as far as the skin, the intensity of the rashes on the body just diminished quite a lot. And this is when I thought, okay, well, maybe this is something that I could learn more about. Because at this point, if you can imagine, from age 11, it had spread to my entire body, became erythrodermic psoriasis. I was told by many practitioners, many doctors, this is something you just have to accept. You can't do anything about it. And really felt like I was being, failed by the system. I thought the only way I can get myself out of this is figuring this out by myself. There was no one that knew what to do. I was turned away from Western medicine. I had other doctors say, well, you're just too ill. I can't help you. This is something that I don't have experience in, which I really appreciate them telling me that, because the last thing I want is to try something that, be someone's experiment. But at the same time, that gives you that sense of fear and loss and uncertainty for the future, because if this person who's educated in the health space doesn't know what to do, then how am I meant to find a solution? So with the Chinese medicine, I found that it was kind of like my last resort. So when I went to this lady who was a Chinese medicine practitioner, she gave me a number of different things. She gave me some herbs that I had to boil and some other bits and pieces. And I did it absolutely diligently. I did everything because I didn't have many options. And so when patients say, this is my last resort, I've tried everything, I understand. It was my last resort too. So it wasn't anything that I take offense with. It's something that is our journey. It's our individual journeys. We try everything. We try so many outlets and different ways of doing things. There's this idea of there being a magic pill doesn't exist. I would have loved that to have happened, but it doesn't exist. And the more we search for a magic pill, the more pain we go through and the more the disease starts to spread. So after doing this treatment with the Chinese medicine practitioner, and those months had passed and my skin had healed, it wasn't cured, but it definitely gave me the opportunity to have a little bit of hope. And I said to myself, well, that's it. I've got to figure this out. I'm going to study Chinese medicine. And I asked this practitioner, where can I learn more about this? And she told me RMIT were starting a new course and to inquire with them, which I did. And then I ended up starting there in 1995. So it was something that was a bit nerve-wracking because there was 2 degrees I had to go through. There was stress because I'm a bit of a stress head. Ultimately, that's why my skin was so bad in year 11 and 12, because I was always putting a lot of pressure on myself with studies, and with being in tertiary education, there was no different. I was quite of a stress head as well, and studied a lot, which meant my skin was not very happy with it all. But what I did realize was I understood more about the human body. I learned about how it works, and it was the foundation that I needed. It wasn't all the answers that I was looking for, but it was a foundation. I need to understand why and how the body works, and then build upon that. So when I entered private practice, I started seeing patients who were also struggling. So in my journey, I often had feedback by my doctors that, this is a rare case because it was so severe. There's not much you can do about it. You're not responding favorably to the treatments we're giving you. And ultimately, that's kind of where you're at. And when I opened up private practice and I was seeing people with psoriasis and eczema, dermatitis, lupus-related skin problems, acne, all those different situations, I started realizing, well, I wasn't the only one that wasn't responding to their treatment. And maybe I'm not so rare and isolated in my experience. And there's other people who may not have the same journey, but they're trying to find a solution, going to different places, and weren't finding the results they were looking for. So it was something that I then built upon. And the biggest thing was understanding that the skin was the outcome. It wasn't the cause. The cause was beyond that. The cause happened perhaps years before that. And looking back at my childhood and looking at the way I ate, being a sensitive kid and being stressed, you kind of think, how does a 10-year-old be stressed? But for your circumstances that you're in, they might feel big for you at that age. And so really piecing all these elements together and using them within myself, because everything I have done, I test everything to myself. Even beyond that, my skincare products, anything that I use and share with patients, I will I test on myself first. And then when I was implementing this philosophy to my patients and seeing the results were different to when it was just an isolated treatment versus when I was putting all the pieces together and identifying what was beneath the surface, what was going on in their gut, what was their hormonal regulation like, how was the stress influencing, putting all these pieces together. And this is where autoimmune diseases are so challenging to treat, not because they're hard, but because they're multifaceted. And if we just look at it as an isolated thing versus multiple components to it, we're going to be missing something. And that's why treatments only resolve for the short term. They don't often last for the long term if we don't put all those pieces together. So this is where this brings me to our 16-week program, which showcases all these elements and takes people from flare-ups to freedom, that embraces all those 5 pillars that I discussed earlier. So this is not for someone who is just looking for another cream, or if you are just looking for a magic pill, or if you're not really ready to make those changes. Like I said before with Sue, she really took this on board and was very much ready to make those changes. So if you're not ready to make changes, then this is not for you. But if you're ready to go, you know what, I'm ready to commit. I want my skin to be healthy. I want my body to be healthy. Then this could be something that would fit quite well with you. I would encourage you to book in a skin assessment, and that way we can identify where your skin's at, how this fits in, and whether this is the right next step for you. If a skin assessment is not ideal for you, you're thinking, no, I'm not ready to chat to anyone, but I want to know a little bit more about the skin reset methodology and what I can do with my own health, then take the skin reset quiz. That will help provide you with what your next steps are and help you along your personalized journey. And that way you can find the information that you're researching. But if you're ready for some help, I'm here for that as well. Any questions, please reach out to us and let us know. There are some FAQs below that we get commonly asked, but if there's something else that you need some assistance with, let us know and we'll be happy to assist.